We now welcome a video message from the Prime Minister of New Zealand, the Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern.
Kia koutou katoa, and warm greetings to you all from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I would have so loved to have been with you all today in Vancouver, and my sincere apologies that I haven't been able to join you. I did want to mention, though, that Justin Trudeau put in a very good word for me to come over for the Women Deliver conference, and he wasn't the only one. In fact, that's where I wanted to start my opening comments today, as you talk about what leadership role we can all play as we fight for and push for gender equality and what that means for me. So I first started out in politics when I was 17 years old, and there was something fundamentally different in New Zealand happening at that time. I was a young girl growing up in a country where we had already had a female Prime Minister, and we were soon to have at that time a second female Prime Minister in Helen Clarke. Helen is one of the people who talk to me about the work that you do as Women Deliver and continues to be a strong advocate for the agenda around the Sustainable Development Goals and gender equality. And how lucky am I to have grown up under that leadership, because it fundamentally changed the way that I viewed the world. Growing up as a girl, I never once questioned that a woman could be Prime Minister. And why would I? Not only had there already been two female Prime Ministers in New Zealand by the time I was entering into politics, we'd also had a female Speaker of Parliament, we'd had a female Chief Justice and female Governor-Generals. In fact, we have both of those roles held by women now as well. But does that necessarily mean that in having those women in leadership roles that we overcome sometimes the confidence gap that exists for women? Not necessarily. Even though I saw women in leadership, did that mean that I personally thought I would ever become a Prime Minister? Absolutely not. And that's something that I'm very mindful of in now holding the privileged role that I do. And why is it that we as women don't always consider ourselves for those roles? Well, probably in every different country there will be different reasons. In some countries, it will simply be that actually barriers exist for women participating in politics at all. And in our region, I'm particularly mindful that in Pacific, the representation of women in politics is particularly low. But I can only speak also to my experience. And I know one of the issues that has persisted here and places probably around the world, particularly developed countries, is that we tend to look at a traditional model of leadership. Perhaps if you look at politics, which has traditionally been dominated by men, we make assumptions around what it is to be a leader in politics, assuming that you have to be pretty assertive, pretty confident, and if we're being a little bit honest and asking the public, they'd probably say you need quite a bit of ego as well, unfairly. And so can we all see ourselves in those kind of roles? When I first came into politics, one of the criticisms I often received was that I was not aggressive enough, not assertive enough, hadn't claimed enough scalps as an opposition politician. I remember making a very deliberate decision that if that's what it took to be in politics or to succeed in politics, I would rather accept not being successful than fundamentally change who I was. Now, perhaps lucky for me, over time, it's been shown that those aren't necessarily the traits that the public are looking for, that you can be yourself, that you can demonstrate both empathy and compassion and still be strong. I absolutely believe that we need more women to demonstrate that you can be your own person in these leadership roles so that the next generation feel that they can do the same. But those are not our only challenges. New Zealand is by no means perfect. We were the first country in the world to give women the vote, and we are so proud of that 125 years ago, and yet we still have a gender pay gap. We still have women overrepresented in low-paid work, and we still have too many women who experience family and sexual violence. Not only that, we know that we have a role to play in working with others. The challenges we face are as a developed nation. But equally, when I pan around the world, we cannot turn our back on the fact that partnership And solidarity is still required to make sure that women everywhere have basic education and access to education, access to the most basic financial security and safety and prevention from being the victims of sexual violence in particular. And we all have a role to play in that. The challenges are large, and the challenges for all of us in our own countries will be varied, but I take heart from the fact that ultimately we are all completely unified in our goal to make sure that women have every opportunity that they deserve and that they need. So as you work together as part of this Women Deliver conference, can I only encourage you to support one another, to hear and through one another's stories, the solidarity that exists. And please know that as you work together, you have all of the support in the world coming from little old Aotearoa, New Zealand. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Welcome to the stage, Project Officer and Anti-FGMC Global Ambassador at AMREF Health Africa, Nice Nalante Lengte.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As a Women Deliver young leader, I would first of all like to give special greetings to all the leaders who are here. Viva young leaders, viva! They are not here, but it's fine. Okay. It's such a great honor to be here with so many courageous women. And I would especially want to first of all thank the Government of Canada for investing and supporting on women's rights. We are on this journey together, and I would want to start by sharing part of my journey this afternoon. It began in the middle of the night 20 years ago in Kimana, my village in Kenya, where I was born and raised. The village where my parents died, and I was raised under the care of my grandfather, who is an elder and a very respected man in my community. His name is Ole Singaru. But that night, my sister Soila and I ran away from him. We snuck out of the house and climbed a tree to hide ourselves. Why? Because we feared an old age ritual called the cut. For centuries, the cut has been part of our community. It means that girls undergo female genital cutting from the age of 8, 9, and 10. Female genital cutting in my community is a rite of passage that prepares girls for marriage. Now, I deeply love my community and its traditions, but this part of our identity is not really important, and it's not good for the rights of women and girls, because it's not just a physical cut, it's a cut of human rights, and it's a cut of their future. Thank you. Female genital cutting robs the innocence and the agency. It robs communities from independent and educated girls. It robs countries of business women, teachers, and doctors. As a little girl, I saw my friends and relatives who underwent the cut. They would be taken very early in the morning into a hut, and I would hear the screams. Most of them fainted. Some died, and I feared that one day my time will come. And then that day came. My uncle organized for a circumcision for me together and my sister, Soila, who was 10 years, and I was 8 years. I desperately did not want this. I wanted to finish my education and become just like my teacher, Mrs. Carlin. I wanted to be my teacher because she was the only hope I had when I was in school. And she pushed me to resist. And that's why today I'm here speaking, because of the strength that she gave me when I was 8 years old. But I also knew that it will come with a heavy price because of my resistance. Without the cut, I would be excluded from the community. I would be seen as a coward, an incomplete Maasai woman, and I will never have a husband from that community. In our language, there's no even name to describe such kind of a woman. The shame is literally too big for words. In our language, it's really a big shame for girls to resist, not to undergo, because this is a practice that every girl has to undergo. Again, you cannot be considered a woman if you have not undergone it. So there I was, a young girl, an orphan, who'd listen to me. Who was I to even change the world? There was no other option for me than to run away. So that's what I did and hide twice. The second time, our circumcision was planned again for me together with my sister. We woke up at 4 a.m. That's when you normally wake up and shower with cold water. The cold water is supposed to act as anesthesia. Remember, you're not given any injection. And when you cry, they called you a coward. And I told my sister, we need to run away and hide in the same tree. But she told me, nice, we can't be running away every time. The other time we were beaten and threatened, and maybe this time they will do something worse to us. But because you are younger than me, just go to the same tree, I will not tell anyone. So I went to the same tree because she has promised me, and I remember when I was in that tree, it's still one of the hardest moments for me because I remember I wanted to go back and save her. But there is no way I will go back, because if I went back, it means they will do it forcibly to me. So my sister was not lucky. She got circumcised and got married at that early young age. And my sister sacrificed herself for me, and that is why I will always be grateful for her. And that is why I still have thank you. The strength to continue fighting for the thousands of girls all over the world who are still experiencing the same. And I ran away again this time, but I decided to go and live with my teacher who gave me a safe home, and that's why I always remember again thanking her. Eventually, I gathered all my courage and I went back to my grandfather, fearful and anxious. I pleaded with him and I told him I will run away forever and never come back. And after seeing that I was serious, insisting that I want to continue with my education, something again incredible happened. And he listened to me, and eventually he has accepted my request, and that is how I got a chance to go back to school and continue with my education. Because there is nobody in our village who could overrule his decision, since he's an elder, I was free, although many people saw me as a disrespectful girl again. But my grandfather supported me so I could continue with my journey. And I became the first girl in my village to go to high school. And I saw the admiration in the eyes of many other girls. They too wanted to become women of their dreams. And then one day, Amref Health Africa came to my village to educate girls, boys, and young people on sexual and reproductive health and rights. I was 17. They looked for a girl and a boy who had an education in my community, and that time I was the only girl who was there. So I went and received a training on issues of female genital mutilation and its risks, and that's where I got more knowledge and confidence, and I decided now I need to go back to my community and start the dialogue. Because we all know changing cultural norms or traditions, it's not easy, it needs patience, it doesn't happen in one day. But because it's a community I knew very well, I was prepared for that. So for years, I started bargaining with cultural leaders in my community, something that even women were not allowed to do. First, nobody would listen. Many people disrupted me. But one by one, the men came to understand that the cut was in fact bad for the whole community. People really started to listen. After years of perseverance again, something started to shift. The elders persuaded the rest of the village to abandon the cut. They replaced the pain and fear with a new ceremony that celebrated the dreams of every girl. It is such a beautiful moment. The elders blessed the girls as they always did. But now they bless them to be able to continue with their education before getting married and have children. Thank you. But what followed again was just as hopeful. The number of girls in schools went up, and the journey continued. I started for working with AMREF and started to tell my story everywhere. More and more people listened. In 2014 again, we had a special sitting with cultural leaders in Mount Kia. That's a sitting that, again, women for the longest time were not allowed to be there. But at that time, they allowed us, and they decided to have a Maasai oral constitution that can stop FGM among the Maasai communities. Thanks to the leadership of these community members, more than 17,000 girls now in Kenya and Tanzania, through the alternative rites of passage, have been saved from the cart, and they are able to continue with their education. I am so, again, very thankful for that. But the journey is so far from being over. There is so much work that has to be done still. We all know that millions of girls are still at risk. 200 million girls and women globally have experienced the cut. Each year, again, we still have another 3 million girls in Africa who are at risk of undergoing female genital mutilation. So we need to educate more people about sexual and reproductive health and rights, and everything that is connected from child marriage to teenage pregnancy and female genital mutilation. And of course, we need to work with communities to come up with alternative rituals. We can do it because we have an approach that has been working, and we have seen that by empowering communities, they are able to make change. We need all of you to become role models for the girls, to encourage them and to invest in them so they can be strong leaders, just like I needed my teacher Caroline when I was 8 years. So we need strong partnerships all over the world, and we can do this with strong individuals who can speak out together with one voice. Cultural traditions don't just stop at borders, so please join me. Together, again, we can speak with one powerful voice, and that is the irresistible voice of Women Deliver. I want to repeat that. I don't know whether you heard. Together, we can speak with one powerful voice, and that is the irresistible voice of Women Deliver. A voice that speaks against female genital mutilation and child marriage, and a voice that shares the hopes and dreams of millions of girls. A voice that tells them of a bright future. And I see those dreams in the faces of girls that we've been able to help. I see the hope in the face of my sister Soila and in the face of my grandfather Ole Singaru, who sacrificed, and my teacher Caroline, who listened to my hopeful cries. Lastly, we have a long way to go, but there is so much hope. And we need, or I will request you to use your voice or your power to bring female genital mutilation to an end by 2030. And lastly, I will also want to tell you that we need all of you, because we all have a role to bring female genital mutilation. We need world leaders like President Trudeau to speak about it. We need world leaders like President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was here yesterday. And I'm happy because he committed to bring female genital mutilation to an end by 2022. And I'm sure if he doesn't mind, we will be able to follow up on that. So we need such leaders who care for the rights and for the rights of girls and women. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and as we say back home, Ashe Ole. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage our moderator, Ready to Hubby.
Right. Thank you so very much. What an inspirational talk. What a poignant personal narrative. I don't know if I'm the only one who, when listening to Nice, I heard optimism, I heard forward thinking. She is solution driven, and that's what this plenary this afternoon is all about. It is about the power of agency, change makers in surviving and preventing gender-based violence. My name is Ridi Tlhabi. I'm a journalist, an author, a broadcaster from Johannesburg, South Africa. Oh, I see there are some South Africans here. Thank you very much. So, as a talk show host, I used to have people phoning into my show to complain about a lack of service delivery, high taxes, crime, you mention it. But every single day, the theme that occurred on my radio show over and over and over was the violent expression of male power in my community and in our society. And the violent expression of male power manifests itself in sexual harassment, rape, domestic violence, and I learned as the years go by that even the gender pay gap is a form of violence, that women all over the world, not just in the global south, don't get paid the same amount of money for the same work done as men. So that got me to a point of deep reflection as a journalist and as a woman. Can I come on the radio every single day? Can I go on my TV show every single week and for 3 hours at a time just talk and do nothing? I realized that I didn't have to hold political office. I didn't have to. I was a leader in that studio for the 3 hours that I was connecting with my listeners. And so I asked myself a basic question. What am I being called upon to do? What is the universe telling me about my own personal agency, about my own leadership? And as happens with life, I delayed, I procrastinated, until one day, live on the radio, I got a call from an active citizen, an ordinary person in a township, phoning me to tell me that there is a woman who's just given birth at a street corner because the nurses turned her away. Why did they turn her away? Because she wasn't South African, she was from Zimbabwe. Our constitution does not allow that. You're not allowed, I think anywhere in the world, to turn a desperate patient away. That's the only basis. That story had such a profound impact on me. And I knew that it could not be business as usual. I had to do something. I had to speak truth to power. I had to be unapologetic and vociferous in criticizing the legal landscape and the political landscape that continues to impoverish women, that continues to create abusive and toxic power relations, where some belong because they've got money, some belong because of the color of their skin, some belong because of their class, and some belong because of their nationality, accidents of history, really. And then others don't belong because of where they come from. That's not the kind of society that I wanted to live in. And that's what brings me here today. I want to be a partner, an advocate, and use my platform and my voice to create change. You are going to hear for the next hour harrowing personal journeys, but be inspired because all are formidable speakers, from those like Nice, who survived such debilitating conditions, and others who were drawn into wars that they didn't choose as child soldiers. They didn't just roll over and die when the guns of war were silenced. They are standing up, and they are using their personal narrative to be agents of change. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Hadiga Bashir, who escaped, who survived being a child bride at age 11 in Pakistan. and is now an activist challenging laws that allow for children to be brides before they are adults. Let's hear her story. And go.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good afternoon. Eid Mubarak to all of you. In my community, we have a tradition that little girls play with doll and group of girls marry their doll with each other with a small celebration just like marriages. When I was 7-year-old, one of my friends told me that she's getting married. All of us were very excited when we thought of the wedding celebration and dressing up. At the time, we were too young to understand that what was happening. It was a doll wedding come to life. After she moved to her husband's house, we used to visit to play with dolls. Her mother-in-law often scolded us that stop coming, and now she's married and grown up now. At the time, we were kids. We couldn't understand why she was saying this. After some time, they stopped her from meeting us at all. We arranged a party for her at school so that she could come. She did come, but she was very pale and down. She started crying. We asked her that what happened. She told us that her husband beat her with an electrical wire. We were in shock that even how this could be possible. The incident imprinted in my mind. My friend's face haunted me for a month. That's when I turned 11. A marriage proposal came for me. The man was a taxi driver. My grandmother told to my father to say yes because it was a really good proposal. I started crying. I couldn't believe that my father, who always supported me for getting education, is now ready to get me married off at this age. I ran to my uncle and told him everything. He talked to my family, but they didn't agree. That's when my uncle told me about child marriage law. And I bravely told to my family that if they got me married to that man, I will file a case on them in the court of law. My uncle supported me and convinced my family and told them that child marriage is a crime. That's when my family realized that what they were doing was wrong. That one bold step changed my whole life. And I decided to fight and spread awareness regarding this cruel act. And I adopted a multi-pronged strategy by visiting door to door and aware mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, and grandparents about the negative impact of early and forced marriage by a girl child, reproductive, mental health, and economic deprivation and uneducation. Thank you. I meet with the legislators and persuade them to speak on the assembly floor about girl-friendly legislation and about child marriage restraint bill, so that the age of a girl child for marriage should be increased to at least 18 years, and the fine and punishment should be increased to make this law more effective, because the current fine for child marriage is just $10 US. I, along with my group members, organized community theater. As theater and social change can be deeply connected, and as theater can play an important role in the process of awareness and restoration. And it can be a transformative experience both for that on stage and in audience. I also conduct a sensitization session with imams, the prayer leaders, so that they could share the message of early and forced marriage in their Friday sermons and addresses. Many people did not support me and labeled me coarse and bad of character. I got threats from extremists, but in no way I was going to give up. And at the age of 13, I started a campaign called Girls United for Human Rights, aimed saving the lives of hundreds of girls and enroll them in school. Now, my father supported me in every step of my life. I received many awards, but I believe that the biggest award will be when real change takes place and every girl of my age is in school instead of getting married and to be forced to be a wife. Let's send off girls to school and not off to be a child bride. One human being with conviction can bring the real change. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hadiga. What a powerful, powerful force. You inspire us all.
Thank you so
And
much.
using, I am so moved because her uncle, she referenced her uncle quite a lot during her talk, is right here with her. And there's something important there, and that is there are always opportunities to seek allies. If not in our families, then in our communities. I encourage you, if you are overwhelmed by the injustices of life, don't for 1 minute believe that you are the only person who has the vision. Don't for 1 minute believe that if you extend your arms and your hands, you will not find like-minded people. All of us need collaboration and need support. And that's what makes Women Deliver such a unique platform, because it is about collaboration. Just to remind you once again that the theme for our plenary today is the power of agency. Changemakers like Hadiga, surviving and preventing gender-based violence. That's very inspiring. And something else that stood out from her talk is the power of education. You know, I come from South Africa, and we can't resist the temptation to quote Nelson Mandela. Sometimes we do it incorrectly, but we kind of want to just name drop and say, this is where we come from. But he did say that education is the one tool that you can use to unlock human potential. And it does address every single societal ill, I believe, including child marriage. So our world is imperfect. Our world is turbulent. And sometimes I get frustrated because I think, don't these problems expire? They don't expire, because if you're watching the news lately, you will see that in Sudan, protesters were shot at for no reason other than exercising their agency. In the developed world, the so-called bastion of democracy, the president of that country is talking about a possible war with Iran. It's almost as if he is salivating, he's desperate for some sort of confrontation. But what are the consequences of war? Displacement of families, rape as a weapon of war, but children who lose their hope and their potential. And our next speaker, Mohammed City Bay, a former child soldier who also discovered that education is the key. Now, he is a law student, and it goes back to the theme, using these personal narratives to unlock our potential and our activism. He believes that children belong in school. Children, especially girls. He shares his story with us. Mohammed.
Thank you. Who I am, what I might have been, what I could have become, and what made a difference is why I'm here. Let me ask you, as you look at me here today, what do you see? Do you see a 26-year-old black man in a suit, going to law school, making corny legal jokes as the way to survive 12-hour days in the library? Yeah. Now imagine an AK-47 going off in Sierra Leone. Do you see a 5-year-old boy watching his parents' lives flicker away like a fast-burning candle? Do you see him holding a gun half his size? He's a child soldier, a captive of those who murder his family. His smile is no more. Keep looking. Do you see a 10-year-old boy, barefoot and wearing dirty shorts in Freetown? He cannot read or write. He has never been to school. He's running, chasing cars, not knowing where his next meal is going to come from. He made the same wish every night to not go to bed hungry the next day. What made a difference for me is receiving quality education coupled with plenty of good luck and opportunities along the way. I'm getting to live my dream, but I know that there's so many more children who do not get to live their dream, who do not get to start the race before it even began. As custodians of what the future should look like, we ought to ask ourselves, is what we are currently doing enough? We are running a deficit when we should be running a surplus. Tradition and custom are words often used by men who are too afraid, too fragile, and too weak to share power with women. If I got a penny for every time I've heard heads of state, men in power, says tradition and custom is why we can't share power, I probably could be a billionaire by now. See, people created tradition and custom. People can change it. This antiquated view of inequality, it's time that we do away with it. It's 2019, for crying out loud. And men, we have two options. It's either we get on board this train of equality or get the hell out of the way because women are coming to take back what's theirs. In Sierra Leone, the country of my birth, we have a new government that says education for every child. I don't know if anyone knows the English language, but the word every means every child, not just a few. But pregnant girls who have been abused, raped, and molested are prevented from going to school. In the United States, the country that I call home, states like Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama continues to pass strict abortion laws. This is 2019, not 1560. And so, for those states, I tell them the same thing. Get the hell out of the way or join the train. See, 99.99% of the people who have made and who've had the biggest impact on my life have been women. And because of them, I am here today. A few months ago, I traveled to Sierra Leone over the Christmas break. While there, I spent time with people who I grew up with after the war. These boys and girls are my peers. Living in the slum, we had the same hopes and dream of the future. That if we work hard and go to school, we could have a life outside of the slum. The reality for them now in their 20s is that they're selling phone cards on the street for 12 hours a day. 12 hours a day. See, no matter how hard they work, there is no way out. The stress of just existing is relentless. I became very conscious of the fact that I was there on my break from law school. But my friends in Sierra Leone, they never get a break. Every day is a struggle. See, I know that my hard work is going to pay off. It's tough. 12 hours in the library, 7 days a week, but the goals are clear. An internship at the New York State Attorney General's office over the summer, back to law school, a job in a couple of years, I hope, and my advocacy work as well. But the goals and dreams of my friends are quite different. What fills their minds is simply survival, of finding the next meal, of making it to the next day. See, it is so unfair and so short-sighted that we are not educating these children. With 263 million children out of school, deprived of their right to quality education, have we ever stopped to wonder what the consequences of not doing enough are? I have seen a society where hope ceases to exist, where children are forced to grow up and skip their childhood and thrust into the chaos of adulthood. Children as young as 5 being given a gun. See, we're here because we dream of a better world. I want you all to imagine the greatest musicians that ever lived. From the Angelina Kudjo to the Fela Kuti, to the Beyonce, the Jay-Z, the Prince of the world. These artists practiced every day because they wanted to be better. When they were better, they wanted to be great. When they were great, they wanted to be greater. And when they became greater, they wanted to be the greatest. So they kept practicing. We are those artists. And we have made tremendous change and progress in the past couple of years. But as my friends in Sierra Leone can tell you, we have so much more to do, and we need to keep practicing to get better. 263 million children are deprived of their right to school. The time is today. The time is right now. Thank you.
So how many Mohammeds are out there? This is what war nearly deprived us of. Are we not blessed and lucky that he survived and he lived to tell his tale? And I heard him talk about going back to Sierra Leone during the Christmas break. And that has so many lessons for me as a girl who grew up in the most famous township in the world, Soweto, but no longer lives there because of social mobility, because of what education has done for me. That as we rise, we need to keep focus on where we come from so that we can lift other people as we go along. Because if you're living only for yourself in this world that requires your expertise, your presence, your qualifications, and your heart, then there is something wrong. if everybody around you looks like you, sounds like you, has the same opportunities as you, then something is really wrong. So can we form these partnerships, collaborate with each other so that we lift so many people with us? Now, a couple of weeks ago, as South Africa was preparing for the elections, one of the big issues was patriarchy and gender inequality. So I hosted a town hall for men to talk about the endemic rape and sexual violence in South African society. At one point, we were known as the rape capital of the world. I know that our politicians get very angry when you talk about this. And I won't nitpick about whether or not the stats were correct, but the fact of the matter is that South Africa, like India, has one of the highest inequality rates in the world, and with it comes one of the highest incident of rape, actually, in the world. And so I wanted to understand, what do men talk about? What are they thinking? What do they think they are being called upon to do? What stood out was that half of the room, if not more, felt they were being attacked. They felt they were being attacked. So I thought, okay, fine, there's more work to do with this group of men because they're just not getting it. But there was a group of men, a whole number of men, unknown to each other, working in their villages, in their communities, to be positive role models to each other. One of them shared the importance of unlearning certain behavior. What do I mean by that? He came from the same township as I did. And it was quite the norm when a boy was propositioning a girl to grab her by the wrist, to twist her wrist, to force her to speak to him, to force her to say hi, to force her to smile. That's what used to happen. And as he worked in the media, reading newspapers, he thought, that's aggressive, that's violence. Getting somebody to bend to your will. But it was the norm. Nobody spoke against it because it was just the norm. And he started challenging what we describe as the norm. Mohammed just told us that systems and rules and cultures are made by people, and they can be changed by people. So this man that I'm talking about went back to his childhood, to the community, to the schools that he attended, and he's spending his life now, unpaid work, unlearning and teaching boys to unlearn certain behaviors. It's very difficult to measure the impact of that work, but I'm confident. I'm confident that those young boys that he speaks to every single day will have a different way of relating to girls, a different way of relating to women. So our next speaker has spent decades, over 40 years, I'm not giving up his age, engaging men, teaching them why it's important to get on the gender equality revolution. And in fact, he has written a book called The Time Has Come, Why Men Need to Join the Gender Equality Revolution. Please help me welcome Michael Kaufman. Thank you.
Well, for 8,000 years, patriarchy has ruled the world. No one said it was going to be easy to bring it to an end. For 8,000 years, violence against women and girls has been both the result of and a key prop of patriarchy. As we stand here today, as we are here at this conference, women and girls around the world are experiencing physical, sexual, and emotional abuse in their kitchens, workplaces, classrooms, streets, and bedrooms. No one said it would be easy to bring it to an end. But that is exactly what women have been doing over the past 50 years. And that's why I'm here today. In 1991, challenged by the tenacity and inspired by the courage of so many women, I was one of 3 men who started something called the White Ribbon Campaign. We knew that the majority of men here in Canada, where we started it, did not use violence in their relationships. But we also knew that the majority of us had been silent. And through that silence, we'd allowed the violence to continue. When we started White Ribbon, we did several things that had never been done before. We said that we must create, and we could create, a movement that would mobilize men and boys to support a feminist issue. Not just a handful of well-meaning men, but men and boys in our hundreds of thousands, men in our millions. We said that no one should own White Ribbon, that it should be a decentralized campaign because we believe that people knew best in their own communities how to reach the men and the boys. We decided to reach out to men right across the political and social spectrum to create a place where we could work together, where we could agree to disagree on key issues, and yet work together to end men's violence against women. We said we should work as allies with women, to actively support women's services, and to stress that for men who want to work as allies with women, there's one place where it must start, and that is it must start with listening to the voices of women. It was one of the two original ribbon campaigns, along with a much larger and inspirational Red Ribbon for AIDS. But most importantly, we proved that it was possible to create a mainstream effort to engage men and boys. Now, we said that wearing a white ribbon, as I am today, wasn't simply an expression of concern about a problem. It certainly was not a statement of personal pedigree, look how great I am. But rather, it's a personal pledge, it's a public promise not to commit, condone, or remain silent about men's violence against women. Now, the decentralized model that we adopted has both strengths and weaknesses. But one of its strengths is that it's been able to spread around the world. I've counted more than 90 different countries where there is or has been some sort of organized white ribbon campaign. We focus on public education. We focus on legal reform. In some countries, there's a real focus on workplaces, on sexual harassment, in classrooms. In some, it's to support women's efforts and women's shelters. You know, when we see efforts around the world, I think if I can click on this thing, is this going to bring up a PowerPoint picture? There we go. If we look around the world, whether the previous picture that you saw, if we go back, men demonstrating in Namibia in support of a law that for the first time was going to make rape and marriage a crime, or a street parade, a carnival in Brazil, men finding ways to reach men on the streets of Beirut. It's the streets, students in Mongolia, an actor in China, finding ways to reach men across the society. It's even decentralized here in Canada, as we see with this picture from a group called Muslims for White Ribbon. A police officer in Guatemala. In Australia, there's an impressive workplace accreditation program where workplaces, whether it's the Australian Armed Forces or private companies or municipal services, have to spend 1 year to 2 years developing policies, programs, training, both to support women who are experiencing domestic violence, policies and training on sexual harassment at work, and outreach and support to women in their communities. It's a way to get boys and men speaking out, like this little boy in a city in Cambodia who saw people giving out white ribbons. He asked, "What is that?" They told him, and he said, "Can I help?" And here he is explaining to a man. And that's been the spirit of White Ribbon. Will men in our millions support this fight? Well, let me tell you one quick story, a story I tell in my new book, The Time Has Come. It's a story told to me by a man from the Swat Valley of Pakistan. And he said that when he was young there, he went off to law school. And while he was at law school in the capital, there was a coup d'etat. A general came to power. And one of the things the general did to curry support among the fundamentalist types was to proclaim the Hudud ordinances. And one of these ordinances said if a woman was raped, to prove it, she had to come up with 4 male witnesses. Of course, she could never do it, at which point she would be charged with adultery, and when found guilty, she would either be executed or put into prison for years. This man comes back from law school, and he says, this is not right, this is not what his religion has taught him, and he starts defending these women. He's successful, he gets them off these charges, and the result is the powers that be trumped up some charge, and they threw him into prison. You can imagine the hellhole they threw him into. And you can imagine, I'm sure, what happened to him when the other male prisoners found out why he was there. You can imagine what they did. And whatever you just imagine, you're probably wrong, Because when the other male prisoners found out that he was in prison for defending the women in their community, they all went on a hunger strike. They said, "We are not going to eat until you release our brother from this jail," and they won. If they can pull that off in a prison under a military dictatorship, think what we can all do around the world. Yes, the violence does continue. No one said it would be easy to bring it to an end. But led by the courage, the tenacity, the strength of women, that's exactly what the world is doing. And now, finally, more and more men and boys are stepping forward to stand at women's side to say to our sisters, "You will no longer be alone." We will challenge ourselves. We will challenge our brothers, our fathers, our sons, our workmates, and our friends. And we do so not out of collective guilt, but we do it out of collective love for the women in our lives and the women in the world. No one said it would be easy. But we are here today working together because we are bringing this violence to an end once and for all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Such an important message to be peers, to be mentors, to be role models to men. Important work indeed. Thank you so very much. So our next speaker has survived sexual abuse herself, but she is using her experience to be a change agent. She is the CEO of Together for Girls. This is a global public-private partnership, and it involves UN agencies, governments from across the world, the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, Canada, and the United States. And it's all about creating environments that are safe for girls. And most importantly, she's focused on generating data and solutions for this global epidemic and human rights issue. Help me welcome Dr. Daniela Ligiero.
Hello, good afternoon. The author and gender-based violence survivor, Christine McDonald, wrote, "There is solace in breaking our silence. There is a strength of spirit that comes when we share our truth. And it all starts with the choice to live on the other side of victim." For me, that moment came at the age of 15. I'm originally from Brazil, and I was on vacation with my family. I wasn't feeling very well that day, so I stayed back at the hotel while they left, and I watched a movie on TV about a woman who had been sexually abused as a child and the effects it had on her life. And I'll tell you, I don't remember who was in that movie or what it was called, but it shook me to my very core. You see, I too was sexually abused for many years, starting at the age of 6 by someone who was very close to our family. Like most survivors of sexual violence, I was terrified and ashamed, and I never told anyone. For many years, I lived in silence, and I felt very, very alone. By the age of 15, I had all the symptoms you'd associate with abuse. I was suicidal, I was depressed, and I was starting to use drugs and alcohol to numb my pain. But that day, watching that movie, for the very first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. And that changed everything. That night, my parents came back, and for the first time, I told them the truth about what had happened. And it started a chain of events that transformed my life. For the last 30 years, I've been on an amazing, although sometimes very difficult, healing journey that has brought me here today to be with you. And I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate. I had access to economic resources, to education, to mental health services, and to support. And all that helped me heal. But one of the things that over the years was so hard to let go of for me was shame. I felt this deep, pervasive shame. And eventually I came to realize that the shame I felt came from growing up in a patriarchal society that made me feel like somehow I was responsible for what had happened to me. Worse, that somehow my value as a woman, as a human being, was diminished because of the sexual violence I experienced. And it left me feeling dirty and broken. And I came to realize that that shame was about so much more than the trauma and the abuse that I had experienced. It was about how society responds to sexual violence. It was about condoning perpetrators and impunity. It was about norms for women that say we must be pure and we must be virgins. It was about toxic masculinity. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to make it my life's mission to change that. And I was done with the shame. Today, I'm the CEO of Together for Girls. Thank you. Today, I'm the CEO of Together for Girls, and we're a public-private partnership that works in over 20 countries around the world. We focus on ending violence against children with special attention to sexual violence. And over the years, I've learned 3 lessons in this work that actually inform the work of Together for Girls, but I think more importantly can help us end sexual violence. And here I'm talking about all forms of sexual violence. Lesson 1, data and evidence must guide the way. Sexual violence is one of the largest silent pandemics of our time. We need to have more and better data to show the extent, the magnitude, the consequences of what's happening. We need to make the invisible visible. Our contribution to that is that we work with the US Centers for Disease Control, and we support national governments in the countries where we work to do surveys of violence against children and youth that look at sexual, physical, and emotional violence. And today we have data for over 10% of the world's population under 24. And the data tell a horrifying story. About 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 9 boys will experience some form of sexual violence before the age of 18. Oftentimes with devastating consequences to their mental health, to their sexual reproductive health, to their educational attainment, and to their economic opportunities. Lesson 2, change is possible. The situation is bad, but it doesn't have to be this way. We know today that there are programs and interventions and policies that can make a difference. We need to invest in solutions, things like implementing laws and policies, parenting programs, safe spaces, changing harmful social norms, and education and life skills. And lesson 3, we have to support survivors and help break the silence. And let me be clear now, breaking the silence is on all of us, not just on survivors. We need to break the silence of institutions, of governments, of entire societies and communities that allow sexual violence to happen and who remain silent. We must demand action now. What is happening is unacceptable. The activist Angela Davis once said, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. Instead, I am changing the things I cannot accept." That's what I've chosen to do with my life. And I know that all of you here today in this conference, this amazing conference all week, are doing the same, changing the things you cannot accept. And I'm so honored to be walking side by side with you on this journey. Today, I understand better than ever that it really does make a difference for all of us to not be alone. Thank you very much. Muito obrigada.
Wow, thank you so much for caring enough to take your heart across the Atlantic, to touching lives all over the world, the marginalized in the first world and in the developing world. Thank you so much, Daniela. So our last speaker for this plenary, Hawa, survived, escaped from Boko Haram. And if you've read a newspaper or listened to any news report on Boko Haram, we know that they are known for violence. They are known for the oppression of girls and women. We know that Boko Haram conjures up some frightening images of violent, armed men who forced little girls into marriage. She comes on the stage with her supporter, Stephen Bogner, who is the vice chair of Too Young to Wed. And his work and activism has also taken him to Afghanistan, Cambodia, Iraq, and he works to create equitable, healthy, equal relationships between men and women and create platforms where women occupy places and positions of influence. And he also was a professor at Columbia University. So Hawa comes on stage with Stephen and her translator, Mariam.
This concludes our plenary.
Will the music stop?
Merci, thank you. In 2016, Stephanie Sinclair, the president and founder of Too Young to Wed, was in northern Nigeria reporting on the experiences of Hawa and 30 other girls who were abducted and forced into marriages with Boko Haram fighters. These girls are often referred to as the forgotten ones, or the forgotten girls, because they were not captured in a very high-profile kidnapping of the 276 Chibok girls that happened in the same year, just 6 months prior to. Hawa had a very normal childhood, before Boko Haram attacked her village. Today, she's here because she wants to share her story. She wants us to hear her voice, and a little in English. Since her escape, Hawa's back in school, getting the education that all girls have the right to. Hawa, welcome to Canada, bienvenue Canada. Can you please share your story?
Hello everyone. My name is Hawa Umar. I came here from a small village in Nigeria. I'm here to tell you the story of my kidnapping by the Boko Haram. We were living in peace, and one day morning, the Boko Haram attacked our hometown. They killed many people and kidnapped the girls. Sun zo gani yayana ne, amma yayana baya gida. Sai suka ce za su tafi da ni. Babanmu ya ce a'a. Sai a take aka kashe shi a wajen tare da kishiyar mamanmu.
They came to our house looking for my elder brother, who was not at home at that time. So they insisted that they want to go with me. But my father said no. So they killed my father on the spot and also my stepmom, who was screaming at that time.
How having them killed your father in front of you, taking away your family, they then took you and almost 300 girls into the forest.
So suka tafi da ke da sauran 'yan mata 300 zuwa cikin daji. Sai me faru?
Where for days you walked, the girls walked without food or water to their camps.
Ba ruwa, ba abinci, har kuka tafi sansani inda suka buya.
Can you tell us what was life like in this camp as a prisoner, as a Boko Haram bride, as a child bride?
Ko za ki iya faɗa ma taron jama'an da ke nan Me ya faru?
Da suka tafi da mu a jeji, sai suka aure mu. Da suka aure mu kuma ba abinci, yau duka, gobe duka. Ba ma samun abinci mai kyau, ba ma samun ruwa mai kyau. Ga fyaɗe kuma. Har na yi kimanin shekara 2 a wajensu, na samu ciki.
They beat us, raped us, starved us, and each of the members married us, and they raped us at any time they wanted. And I was there for almost 2 years, and unfortunately, I even got pregnant.
For almost 2 years, beaten and starved and raped as a child bride. I remember you telling me several stories where you actually wanted to take away your own life.
Kina ƙarama a haka, kullun duka, ba kula da lafiya, ba abinci. Kin sha faɗa mana cewa kin so ki gudu.
You were pregnant.
Kuma kina da ciki.
And you had the will to live and to escape, and you did escape.
Kuma kina son ki gudu, kin sa a ranki cewa za ki gudu, kuma kika gudu.
How one night, the fighters had left the door open.
Suka bar kofa a buɗe da daddare, kika samu kika gudu.
And how you got up and you ran through that door and went back to the forest, ran back into the forest.
Kika gudu, kika shiga daji.
And you found a lady, an old lady, in a village that had already been attacked by Boko Haram and been burned down. Can you continue the story?
Har kika samu kika kubuta, kika haɗu da wata tsohuwar mata a wani ƙauye har ta taimaka miki, to me ya faru?
Da na gudu a wajensu, sai na tafi wani kauye ma an yi ataki. Ta yi wata sona tare da wata tsofuwan ta taimake ni. Ina zuwa wajenta sai na fara yin jin naguda, sai na haifu a wajenta. Na ɗan yi kwana 2 a wajenta, sai ta nuna min hanya na fita. Ina zuwa sai jaririn ya mutu, ga wahala, ga rashin lafiya, ishirwa. Da na fara bashi nono, ni na ɗauka barci yake, ashe ta mutu. Na binne ta sai na wuce.
The old woman helped me to deliver the baby on getting to that village. I stayed with the old woman for a few days. Then I said I need to go because I don't want to put the old woman in danger and also the villagers in danger, because previously Boko Haram had attacked that village. While the old woman told me how to get back to the town, Maiduguri town, so I left. While I was in the bush, one day I wanted to feed the baby. The baby was at my back. When I carried the baby, I felt the body was stiff. So I found out that the baby was dead. So sadly, I buried the baby by myself and moved on.
How your courage and compassion, inspirational. You left the old lady behind in the village so that Boko Haram fighters would not go back and attack and kill her.
Kin yi kokari kika bar wannan ƙauyen saboda kar a zo a ƙara kai hari zuwa ga tsohuwan nan da kuma wayanda suke cikin ƙauyen nan.
And you continue to walk to Maiduguri, which is one of the largest towns in northern Nigeria, and you went into a refugee camp. But as a child, as a female child, you still didn't feel safe, so you left the refugee camp.
Daga nan wurin har kika samu kanki a cikin garin Maiduguri zuwa wani sansanin 'yan gudun hijira. Amma a nan wurin kika ji ba za ki iya zama ba saboda tsoron kar su zo su sake sace ki.
And you stayed in several homes, and that's when you met Stephanie Sinclair and Too Young to Wed. And one of the first things you asked Stephanie was clothes and an education.
Bayan da kika tashi daga sansanin 'yan gudun 'yan hijira, kin zauna da mutane daban-daban har Allah ya haɗa ki da Stephanie da ƙungiyanta suka taimaka miki. Kuma lokacin da kika haɗu da su suka ce miki, kika ce musu ke kaya kike so sannan kuma da makaranta a lokacin.
You didn't want to come to Canada or to the United States. You wanted to stay in Nigeria and to get an education. Here you are, 2019, and you wanted to share your story, for everyone to hear your voice. What would you like to tell the audience today?
Bayan da kika haɗu da ita, biki ce kina so ki zo Amurka ba ko Canada ko ƙasar wata farar fata don ki karatu. Kin fi son ki zauna a ƙasar ku a Najeriya ki yi karatu. Gashi yau shekara ta 2019 kin fara karatu, to me za ki ce ma mutanen da suka halatta a nan game da labarinki?
ina roƙon mutanen ƙasar waje su taimaka wa mutane kamar irina wanda wannan abin ya kasance da su. Ina so su masu taimaka musu a sa su makaranta, wanda dubbannin matan da wanda yake cikin jeji a wajen mutanen nan su ma ina so a ji a karbo su a zo a sa su makaranta don saboda ingance na ci gabansu na rayuwa.
I'm pleading with the international community as well as the NGOs to come and assist other children like me that were adopted and kidnapped, who are in captivities and they don't have voice. Nobody is talking about them, so that they can go to school, they can develop and be a better generation.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hawa just represents one of the thousands of girls missing in the camps, in the forests, in northern Nigeria. You're hearing my voice today. I'm hoping next year, with more education, you hear Hawa's. We are asking for the international community, NGOs, governments, humanitarian organizations, not to forget, to take the power of justice, the power of responsibility, to secure funds for those organizations that are actually in the field, fighting for girls like Hawa, fighting for girls, fighting for their rights. Give them the power to secure healthy and safe spaces. We talk about power. True power comes from compassion, cooperation, and collective responsibility. Hawa, thank you for the power of humanity and inspiring all of us become better human beings. Thank you.
Mun gode da wannan jajircewan da kika har kika zo kika faɗi labarinki. Mun gode.
Ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. We would like to thank Women Deliver for giving Hawa and us the platform to speak, to hear Hawa's voices and all the thousands of girls that we don't hear today. And thank you, Canada. Merci pour le gouvernement du Canada for hosting. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you for
I think for a lot of us, this was another life-changing moment. I have nothing to add, nothing whatsoever to add, except to remind you of the theme for today's plenary, that it is about the power of agency, changemakers on surviving and preventing gender-based violence. And it's the prevention that I want to remind you of, so that we can take this power, we can take this courage and this tenacity and decide the things that we are not prepared to tolerate. And decide, raise our voices, amplify our voices, and demand a just world. That's all I have to say. Thank you so very much. You've been a great audience.
This concludes our plenary session. Ainsi s'achève cette séance plénière.